Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. I'm your host, Jody Krangle, and this podcast will discuss just how sound influences our behavior. I generally talk about this in the context of advertising and marketing, but there are other places this is important too. I really feel that it plays a much more important role in our lives than maybe we realize. So let's delve a little deeper. Here's the first part of my interview with Monte Bowden. Monte grew up in a small town in rural northeast Iowa. As a boy, he loved to listen to the radio with dreams of becoming a DJ or radio personality. Those dreams led him to study communications at Warburg College in Waverly, Iowa. After college, he went to work in television news at KWWL in Waterloo, Iowa, rising through the ranks from intern to news director. Prior to joining AMPERAGE, Monte also served as an adjunct professor in communications at his alma mater. Monte joined AMPERAGE as a communications strategist, leading PR efforts for agency clients. With his well-rounded background in storytelling, video production, and management, Monte has worked in a variety of roles at AMPERAGE and currently serves as a creative director. Monte is a home brewer, and in his free time, he retreats to the streams of northeast Iowa to fly fish for trout. Monte and his wife Laura are parents of 4 adult sons. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, Monte. I really appreciate it. So I want to sort of start things off by asking what your background in sound is, because I know that you came from like a radio and TV background, and
I
how
did.
did that all begin?
Started when I was a kid. I remember it very distinctly. My brother got a clock radio when we shared a room, and when it was time to go to bed, we put the clock radio under the covers and we'd listen to WLS radio out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Remember listening to John Records Landecker on the overnights and just thinking this radio thing was so cool because he was having so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And as I grew up, and I don't know, it must have been, when you're in junior high and high school and thinking about what am I going to do, I start, trying to figure out your career path. I just really wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to have fun and help people get their day started or whatever. And I remember a couple local DJs that I listened to every morning, and it inspired me. And so when I was starting to look for colleges, I wanted to find one that had a radio station. And ended up doing that, and went to a small private liberal arts college about an hour from home. And they really hooked me because they said, yeah, you can be on the radio and you can come run cross country for us, and the rest was kind of history. So that's
Nice.
how I got interested in all things that are to do with sound.
Yeah. So you went from television, so you were a news director for a while?
Yeah, and so that led to, radio. Actually, I did an internship, at a local station one summer during college, and, because I had done that, a television news director at local, NBC affiliate, took a chance on this kid that had no television experience and said, "Well, if you can make it at that radio station," he respected them enough to say, "We'll give you a shot here." So it's where I got into television, really learned, about video from a news background, and that's where I learned how to run a television camera and
Mm-hmm.
how to write news. Real, I mean, I had that in college, but there's nothing, no substitute for actually going out and doing it. And so I had great teachers and mentors along the way. And so yeah, that turned into a about a 12-year career in television. Did started out with some things in front of the camera, but was really my skill set. I was a newscast producer and putting the stories together and working with reporters and anchors and that sort of thing. And then that led into management in the newsroom. I was the assignment editor for several years, and then
Mm-hmm.
news director as well. I think I was about 4 years in each of those positions before I realized time to do something else.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow, that is a long time to be doing that, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had, four young sons and a wife at home that, were always wondering why his dad always at the TV station and isn't around to do things, and so,
Yeah.
it was really cool. Some of my coworkers at the TV station, about the time I was becoming the news director, were leaving to start an advertising agency, and,
Mm-hmm.
it just turned out, one day as I was, looking for what to do next, ran into one of them in the grocery store, and the next day that would happen to be a Saturday, and on Sunday, they had an ad in the newspaper, back when classified ads in the newspaper where you look for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I had left, television news. I was doing some, adjunct teaching at the college where I went to college, and, was teaching reporting and that sort of thing, just on a part-time basis, and I had, connected with another old news buddy, and we were doing some freelance video work, some fundraising videos and that sort of thing, when I ended up, talking to, the folks here at AMPERAGE, then Me and V, which was acronym for the three founders, Mathis, Ernest, and Vandevenner, and it was D that I saw in the grocery store. Called her the next day, and she said, "Go talk to Mark." And I think later that week or the next, I was here working doing public relations
Mhm.
with a news background. And then it's just kind of been a succession of one thing to another at an agency. Having some skill set and some background really led me into the video audio production side of things, and then now to what this whole idea of being a creative director, where you're working with all types of different media, old, new,
Yeah, sure.
to be determined. Yeah.
So what's the difference between television news and an ad agency? What are you finding, like, the big, huge differences are?
Well, I don't have a pager.
Okay, well, I don't think anyone has a pager anymore.
No, that in and of itself dates me, right? Because
Yeah.
that was
Well,
a
I know
thing.
what one is.
Yeah, see? Yeah, there's a little audio history for you.
Yeah.
But it was, it was always funny having the pager go off, and it was always at those times when my sons would just look at me like I was crazy because, on the news, they were saying, "Storms are coming, don't stay inside," and dad was always leaving, to go out and cover and make sure we were doing that. So, it was just that interesting dynamic. So, that's the difference. Actually, there are probably more similarities, than differences, and that just has to do with the pace of the news business. There was always,
Mhm,
the next newscast is, and in advertising and fundraising work that we do, there's always the next deadline is, the next project is, and so that is, I'm probably kind of a deadline junkie in that way because that's really, been part of everything that I've done, and it's probably true of every thing that we pursue. There's got to be a time that it needs to be done, but
mhm.
I think that the big difference though is just, the emphasis on, the creative process. Not to say that the news business wasn't creative; it was very creative. I remember I was working in that era when live shots in television newsrooms were really evolving, from someone just standing, and delivering their stand up out live. And it still happens, but we had wireless mics for the first time, and so reporters were walking and talking and doing
Oh,
things, and it really
yeah.
really became a much better storytelling,
Mhm.
than just what the limitations had been prior to that. So there was creativity, but yeah, it's just at a different level. The expectation is a little bit higher in this line of work.
Yeah, I guess it would be. So storytelling, like, that's a great portion of what you're doing, especially now, and I would
Yeah.
imagine for the fundraising too, because you're trying to, wrench people's hearts, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's what it all really comes down to, is what story do we have to tell, so
Mhm.
that we can connect with people emotionally in the area of fundraising, so that they want to support a cause, support some good work that is being done, and or it's how do we help people to make a decision, and really, if you look at all the major decisions we make, a lot of times those aren't, based on facts. You think about
Oh, no. They're
the
emotional, very emotional.
yeah, the person you decide to marry and spend your life with, or the home you decide to buy, and the facts may not make any sense, but we do it anyway because of the emotion. And that's what we're doing in advertising, without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. So how does, sound play a part in that? I mean, specifically well, I have to ask, I mean, we are on this
Yeah,
podcast.
right.
Um, but, is there a difference between the sound, that you might use in a fundraising, I guess, ad, besides, like, a regular one or I don't know?
Yeah, a lot of the things that we do around for our fundraising campaigns, would be a campaign video, and it really has to do with telling that story. We've been on kind of a track lately. We've been doing lots of fundraising for preservation of outdoor
Sure,
a
yeah.
marsh, a park, that sort of thing. It really gives you an opportunity to just capture the natural sounds that happen there. So that kind of brings it almost back to news, because we were always wanting to have natural sound bridges that would happen in a news story that would bring the viewers. We're doing a lot of things
Sure.
when we used to watch news on television at the same time, and so that natural sound was a way to bring people into the story to catch their attention to make it. Come above the clutter of everyday life.
Mhm.
It's really the same way. You use that sound to draw people in, to help enhance the story, to help them connect with a location, to help them connect with people. From the spoken word to just the natural sound of hey, we're in need. We we need infrastructure. It can be something very mundane and boring, but
Mhm.
yet you can find ways to have sound help you to make that more interesting.
I guess it's a definite skill all its own. So you're talking, about, like, sounds as in, like, background sounds,
Mm.
of nature and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's part of it. There's
Mhm.
a lot more,
Yeah.
if you think about it.
Oh, totally.
The
Yeah.
the natural sound, there's, certainly the spoken word announcer.
Yep.
We need our Jodies. Um, but just one of those words going to be, right? So you need a script. A lot of times it's sound effects. What do we add in to maybe we can't capture a natural sound, but we want to use a sound
Oh, sure.
to
Foley.
enhance the experience. Yeah, there's a little script to SFX. We're going to drop that in. Another really powerful one, silence.
Yes.
Right?
You're totally right. Yeah.
It's so rare because we're surrounded by sound, noise.
Mhm. Yeah.
And really, we hopefully, we aren't just creating more noise. We wanna create something that is meaningful, that's going to help us, connect, with someone, to make them pay attention for a while,
Mhm.
to at least consider, whatever, service or, example of fundraising, whatever cause we might be trying to promote to help people to maybe see a little differently. So really, we want to create a sound experience at that level rather than a noise experience. Just more of the same. People, we're bombarded, right? We know the numbers are they're hard to even believe the messages that we're exposed to every day.
Yeah, very true. I would imagine also that, music plays a really big part in that too.
Yeah, it really does. And I think it's it's a trap you can fall into
Mhm.
if you don't think about that early on. um,
Yeah.
that, "Oh, gee, we're gonna need some music," instead of, "Wow, what music should we what is this gonna sound like?" Because it creates such a feeling, when we're listening to music, in a way that makes us feel, that full range of emotion, and I think, some of the fun sound projects that I've worked on, almost were, cinematic, in the approach. It was very evident from the beginning of the project. We gotta start with the right music soundtrack because this has gotta be big. It's gotta be impactful.
Oh, yeah. That helps me a ton as well. Like, I
Yeah,
know when I'm trying to come up with the tone of voice, hearing music in advance just automatically tells me where I need to go.
yeah. And so, here's the underscore, right? This is what's gonna support, the work that you're doing. And, a lot of times, what we find is that if we have, the right music, if we have the right images, we don't need a lot of words.
That's true.
I was really, really taught this. We had a healthcare client. It was a hospital. They had built a new emergency department and a new cardiac unit, and it was a significant investment. And when it was opening, they wanted to be able to showcase that, and they wanted to do it in a different way. Not just the standard way of showing doctors and nurses and the care.
Mhm.
So this was the era before drones, and so what they decided to do is we rented a helicopter and we put our videographer up there with a stabilizer and tried to capture some video. We did it during the day. The day we went, it was really windy and it was bouncy and horrible during the
Wow.
daytime. That was a great gift actually because it forced us to go back up at night, and the shot just got more wonderful and more cinematic, and it was really dynamic. And we knew we had something that was gonna be really special because they wanted to show people a view they'd never seen. So let's make this look like someone flying in, being transported to the ER via helicopter, and that was kind of the inspiration behind it.
Yeah.
And then it was, all right, we've got this great image. What's the great music? And it was this really, it was the only way I can describe it, it was just cinematic. And so you hear the music. We're coming up from black, and you start to see the hospital. We're a ways away, and we're getting closer and approaching, and you see the emergency sign. And when we started out, had a long form, we had sound effects, helicopter pilot calling in, all of that. And what happened is we just started to strip it away. And we took this away, and then we took that away. It was the same way with the script. We had all these things we wanted to say about this new facility. And I think at the end of the day, because we had the great music, we had, helicopter sound effects that we put in
Mhm.
um, against this backdrop of a really interesting video. We didn't need to see much. I think it came down to 12 words was all but it also needed the right announcer to deliver those words. This is before I knew you, Jody. What we ended up with, the client had historically uh, middle-aged Caucasian announcer, voice talent, sweet lady,
Mhm.
very almost grandmotherly. But
Sure.
we needed to disrupt, right? And that's what this spot was ultimately doing. It was going to show you something you hadn't seen before.
Mhm.
So it was really going to be disruptive. So we needed a disruptive voice talent. Found this African American male, think James Earl Jones, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he
Oh,
said,
that'd be a great voice.
yeah, we had him say 12 words at the end of seeing this approach to the hospital.
Mhm.
He said, always open, always ready. Allen Hospital takes very good care of you. It was just that simple, and it was just that little footnote, at the end, and it told you really everything that you knew. "We're
Mhm.
here for you. We're gonna take care of you.
Yeah.
We did all of that so we can take care of you." It was really cool. It was just but it was all about the music, that sound effect of the helicopter that we heard at the very beginning. It just drew you in,
Yeah.
and, it kind of opened the curtain on the whole show, and it was a pretty powerful 30 seconds. It was really well received. The gentleman that was we were working for to this day said it's the most talked about thing that he's ever done, and he had a 30, 40 year career
Oh, wonderful.
in
Yeah.
broadcasting and marketing. So it was really cool.
Sure.
It's been a few years. The technology has changed. We'd probably approach it differently,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure we'd make the same impact. It was just kind of one of that. It was a moment in time. Now everybody's used to seeing drones, and we're used to seeing that kind of bird's eye view, and that was kind of the magic of that. That wasn't something we were accustomed to seeing at that time.
I can really picture that impact. It sounds like it would have been a great commercial. But yeah, I think you're totally right about the quietude, I guess, because you don't hear that a whole lot. Like, now it's just there's still so much stuff going on.
Yeah,
I don't know that it's necessarily noise. It could be noise, but
yeah, it's really subjective, right?
yes.
And silence is such a rare thing, and so that's why it can be, powerful when you
Mhm.
have silence built into the spot or the video or whatever it is you're producing, because it really becomes that thing that maybe gets your attention. It's hard to find silence. I go out and I like to fly fish for trout,
Mhm.
and even when I'm out there away from other human activity, there's still sound, and it's sound that I love, and it brings peace to your soul. That sound of running water in a trout stream is one of my
Mhm.
all-time favorite sounds, always will be, and it just brings peace. And so, that just that power of sound, and I think too, when you think about, branding and how we use sound to help our clients, with their brand to be identifiable,
Mhm.
there's a lot of simple techniques that, I think, I looked this up a little bit. I think NBC actually pioneered this with their NBC chimes. Dun,
Yep.
dun, dun.
Yeah, yeah.
I know a little bit about music. I had to look, but that's the notes are G, E, and C in the key of C. Very common notes, but just became associated. And I had to find out, well, where did that all start? Those are actually tones to alert the audio engineers and the announcers to the end or beginning of a piece of audio. Well, it ended up becoming something that audiences were hearing as well, and it just became associated with NBC. And I think they were the first, to actually trademark or patent, any kind of a sounder like that. It's, we know a lot of them now, right?
Yeah. Well, they call it sonic branding.
Yeah. Isn't
Yeah.
that cool?
Yeah.
Sonic branding.
It is. It's super cool.
You probably get a burger and fries with a
Well,
Sonic.
well, yeah, speaking of that, da 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 da, right? Like,
Right.
we know
Yeah,
that one.
exactly.
There's
And
tons of them, yeah.
yeah, ESPN and Fox NFL,
Mhm.
dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
And if you listen, there's a lot of commonality now in some of those. I mean, the speed is different, but it's those, and I took just enough guitar lessons to realize that the pop music, the hit music it's all very simple, three simple chords, and they use the same chords over and over, just in different things. And
Oh, yeah.
isn't that interesting? That's what our ear gravitates toward.
Well, it's easy to
Um,
understand for us, I guess.
yeah.
Like, I think, previous to this, we were talking about a Cheers episode. Do you remember the one where they're doing their audio branding and they're trying to put it to Old MacDonald?
Hmm.
Or the guy keeps making it to go to Old
It just
MacDonald because
gravitates back there because that's what's familiar.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, people remembered it. They just they
Right.
remembered a tune that they knew.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think it's just gonna be everywhere, and it's only getting more and more popular, I think, because people are starting to realize that audio is really the quickest way to our emotions and our brains. We've used music playlists to affect our moods for years.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, it's a direct connection to our hearts, right? I mean, um,
Yeah, totally.
you just think about the mood that music creates, and even the spoken word. I was reminded we're kind of in the holiday season now, and I was listening to a little piece on the radio as recently as this morning, and they were just reading a little bit of Night Before Christmas, and just
Oh, yeah.
I felt like a kid.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it brings you
Because
back.
I remember that being read to me, and I could say that about, many of the stories, from my youth, reading
Mhm.
my mom, I remember one of my earliest memories is mom reading the children's book, Blueberries for Sal. And it was a little story about the girl who went out picking blueberries with her mom, and she ends up meeting up with a bear. But the funnest thing when mom read that was the author had written about the sound of the little blueberries as they hit the bottom of her pail. Kaplunk, kaplink, kaplank. It was the funnest part. Oh, mom, read the kaplinks again. But yeah,
You can just
that
imagine it.
yeah, yeah, and I felt like I was right out there with her. But
Mhm.
again, it combined. It was really good writing, because it captured that whole experience, right? You could have just said she dropped her blueberries in the bucket and moved on, but no, they took the time to say, "This is what it sounded like."
Mhm.
And in your mind, you can by listening, you kinda had an idea of what it looked like, but that really made it so very real for me as a kid,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that just the power of the spoken word is really cool as well.
And just the idea that the author had the presence of mind to include the actual sound effects in the written
Yeah,
word. Like,
yeah.
that's just
I
brilliant.
I I should go back and see what else, but for whatever reason, that's the part that was most memorable for me, was the sound.
Sure.
Isn't that interesting? And
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe
Well, as
that's,
kids, we take in those sounds and that's what transports us back as adults. Like I was talking with one of the interviews I had was with a fellow named John McClain who has a studio in Vegas and he does a lot of sound design for casino games and all sorts of other film and things like that. And he actually teaches a film course. And one of the things that he mentioned to me was that sound is the easiest way to time travel
hmm,
because you hear a sound that you maybe heard when you were a kid or something like that, and it automatically takes you right back there.
for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting too. I remember, there's a cut on one of my Stevie Ray Vaughan blues CDs,
Mhm.
and he's talking about blues music and how that came from imitating everyday sounds, a horse that was walking down the street, or a train as it was coming into the station. And that's really where, the beat for some of that music came from. It's just this cool thing that these sounds are all around us, and then how we take those sounds and we pivot them and we
Yeah,
reuse them in different ways.
sure.
And it's just fascinating. Yeah.
Well, for advertising, I'm assuming that reusing sounds like that will transport other people that are listening, so that sort of makes them emotionally more invested in what they're listening to.
Yeah, I think so. We certainly are intentional about the choices that we make, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes we luck into something, but it really takes some real thought into how are we going to design the sound. Much like what you're talking about with how do we do that in film, and how do we do that, and how do we create that environment? How do we transport people to a place we want them to go,
Yeah.
so that they can feel what we want them to feel? You have to be really intentional, and then you have to think about, what are the tools? What do I have to work with really to create that? And sometimes it's just a very simple message, and sometimes it can be kind of layered and more complex.
Hmm.
And I think what I typically find is you get to a point of complexity, and then when you start to simplify it back down to what's all that really needs to be said, what needs to be conveyed, that's when it gets really good.
This has been part one of our interview. I hope you'll tune in next week for part two. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, please take a moment to give the podcast a review. It's greatly appreciated and super helpful. Until next time.